So I said one or two shocks, Rob. Is Man United losing at home to Brighton one of those, given everything that's happened? And you and I on ESPN FC Live yesterday, we were talking about the topic bar, which says Man United in a mess. Was it a surprise today?
No, it probably wasn't. This is the fourth league meeting between the two teams that Brighton have won, which shows that they've been quite dominant in this fixture very recently. You're right in what you say. It's been a mess off the field in the last 2 weeks of the international break. There have been club statements about players being suspended and removed from first-team training and given leaves of absences. And this really was a chance, for United to let their football do the talking after that 2 weeks of chaos, and they just didn't do it. And now, Brighton have won relatively comfortably 3-1 here, and in a really long unbeaten streak that United have built up at Old Trafford. And to be honest, United now are in full-on crisis territory. Really, they've lost 3 of the first 5 Premier League games. It really is a mess at this club now, on and off the field.
Janusz, is it fair to say that Manchester United only have themselves to blame for the mess they're in?
Well, in this game, to a degree, I thought it was, the energy and the start was pretty good. Marcus Rashford was probably as good as I've seen him in I don't know how long. I mean, what I liked about him, because he took responsibility, right? I mean, it looked maybe a little bit selfish at times, but I think this is the sort of Marcus Rashford you want to have. Obviously, they have a goal called back. I think at times they were in control of that game. But of course, when you look at, Brighton, look... Manchester United obviously were very, very thin. But if you look at Brighton, I mean, 6 changes, a significant one, right? No Solly March, no Pervis Estupinian. And look at Tariq Lamptey, how big a role he played in his spot. Billy Gilmer obviously wasn't there. João Pedro came in from the bench and scored as well. So I think there are no excuses, because, this is a Brighton team that not only has been better than Manchester United, when they play against each other, but the incredible faith that Roberto De Zerbi has in his squad, not his team. Because Brighton really, I mean, when you think about it, should be a team that's 12, 13 deep, but they certainly aren't. And De Zerbi is never worried about not playing his best player. I think this is what I get out of all of this, because the fact that Manchester United are in trouble, I think we knew that ahead of the game, not just on the pitch, but off the pitch as well.
That's a good point that Janusz makes, Rob. This was a Brighton team that was some first-team players and some squad players. And they've run out comfortable winners, and they could have won more. Yes, Janusz is talking about Marcus Rashford playing well. No one cares if you're a Man United fan that Marcus Rashford played well. They care about the fact their team lost 3-1 and could have lost by more. What was the atmosphere like?
Well, Janusz is right. I mean, United started quite well, and it felt like the crowd had turned up at Old Trafford really with a point to prove as well after those 2 weeks of controversy. There was a lot of energy in the stadium. United's start helped that. There was a couple of chances, a couple of heavy challenges, which also always helps to raise the fans. And then Brighton score their first goal, and the energy just disappears. It disappears from the stadium. It disappears from the team. And really, United were lucky for a spell after that to hold on and only be 1-0 down. Brighton's goals have come on the break today, but this is no smash and grab. Brighton have had more possession, they've had more shots on target. They were well-deserved winners. In fact, at the end of the game, United had a little bit of spell of pressure at 3-1 down and had the ball for a little bit. The Brighton fans in the corner of the stadium were singing, "We want our ball back," because they'd had it for so long. That was the kind of game that it was. And the worry for Ten Hag is that even last season, where there were lots of ups and downs, the one constant that they had was winning their home games and keeping clean sheets at home as well. And now apparently they can't even do that. It really is a worry for United. And Janusz is right. United look like a team in trouble, and it certainly won't get any easier for them. They've got Bayern Munich in the Champions League away on Wednesday, and then they've got a really awkward trip to Burnley the following weekend. If they don't win either of those 2 games, I'm saying now that I think they're already in a little bit of a crisis. Fast forward a week and they don't win either of those 2 games, it really will be panic stations.
Rob, 64th minute. They're 2-0 down, Manchester United. They take off what they thought was going to be their goal scorer, but ultimately the ball had crossed the line earlier from Marcus Rashford's cutback, Rasmus Højlund. The thing that struck me was the reception that decision got. What message were the Man United fans saying to a manager who has got them out of trouble and has really turned them around? But when they need goals, they take off Højlund. Was that a surprise, that reception?
It was, because obviously we've been speaking for the last 2 weeks about this Sancho situation and the feeling among fans during all of that was that they are going to back the manager over Jadon Sancho. Their trust in this manager is absolute. Well, today, when he decided to take off Højlund and put on Anthony Martial, there was loud boos ringing around the whole of Old Trafford. And that really, for me, was the first sign of support or dissent against Ten Hag. It wasn't massive and it wasn't sustained. There was cheers and claps when Højlund eventually went off and Martial came on. But it really does show that the atmosphere around this club is really disintegrating. The one thing that Man United fans can probably agree on at the moment is that Ten Hag is the right man for this job. The problem is that today we've seen the first signs of, not upset, probably that's too strong of a word, but dissent, certainly dissent. Ultimately, you're booing a decision that your manager has made. I'm sure that Ten Hag will come out afterwards and say that, Højlund's not played an awful lot of football. He had to come off. It was pre-planned after about an hour. It wasn't a comment on his overall performance, which I thought was okay. But it's just another thing to throw into the mix. Another problem that Ten Hag will have to answer now in the post-match press conference.
Yeah, that's true, Robin. I hear you, but I think it's just misplaced. And I'm talking about the comments perhaps from United, not from you, of course. The dissatisfaction with Ten Hag, because you've got to feel for him because of what he's done last season, right? It always felt like a pivotal point because you have to deal with Ronaldo, then Harry Maguire. Now all of a sudden he has a Greenwood who he inherited, Anthony and Jadon Sancho. There's very little you can do about a couple of them. But the issue for me is that Manchester United don't really even know what they're missing from Højlund. Let's be honest. They don't know what sort of player he is or he's going to be for Manchester United, just like you and I and everybody else. The issue I think for him and for supporters who probably realize that is that they got, as much as I like the system, it was kind of like a 4-3-3 sort of with Bruno playing central. I thought at first it was good, but it felt like Bruno Fernandes was boxed in a little bit in that midfield, and he probably would have been better playing a little bit wider. He was good over the international break, 2 goals against Slovakia, Luxembourg. Okay, I suppose 9-0, but he had some assists there as well. And let's face it, he's getting absolutely nothing from Eriksen. He's getting absolutely nothing from Casemiro. Onana, again, today on one of the goals, at the very least, you have to look at him, right? I think it was the third goal and say, his distribution from the back wasn't great. He played a lot of long balls that were lost. Those are 50-50 balls and not the sort that, you ping in because you've gotten a goalkeeper of the ilk of Alisson or Ederson that can distribute the ball. We haven't seen that just yet. So I think there are bigger problems than Højlund because I don't know what to expect from him. So why would Ten Hag have to take responsibility for that, as you've said, from him just getting there? So I think all around there's some structural issues.
Final question for you, Rob, before you head off, and thank you for joining us from Old Trafford. Brighton will play Europa League football on Thursday against AEK Athens. The fact that you said right at the start this wasn't a shock, that they went to Old Trafford and they won. Can Brighton qualify for the Champions League and finish top 4 this year?
On today's evidence, certainly yes. They are that good of a side. Again, this was no smash and grab. This was a team who were in complete control for an awful lot of the game and probably could have scored more than the goals that they did. I think the issue probably with Brighton is that you sometimes don't know what you're going to get. They were beaten quite heavily at home by West Ham earlier this season. They lost heavily at home against Everton at the end of last season, an Everton team who were on the verge of getting relegated. I think it probably suits the way that Brighton want to play when you play against a bigger side who are expected to play on the front foot. When you get a team like West Ham or Everton who are happy to a little bit happier to sit back and hit them on the break, they seem to struggle a little bit. But, they've got a manager in Roberto De Zerbi who was adapted to this league so quickly. Janusz is right, the point he made earlier in the show, that he trusts not only his starting 11, but also his entire squad. He's got complete faith in the players that he's got at that club. And even today, when they haven't had a lot of starters, they look by far the better team. So, it might seem a little bit silly to say, Brighton should be aiming to finish in the top 4, but why not? They are that good a side. They are a match for absolutely anyone in this league on their day. And if they can become a little bit more consistent, then yeah, of course, why not? They are probably the best coached team in this league. And that will go an awful long way when the positions are handed out at the end of the campaign.
31 league games unbeaten at home, Manchester United. That comes to an end by the team that beat them 31 games ago, Brighton and Hove Albion. Rob, thank you for your time today. And you can read Rob and hear from Rob on ESPN FC with regards to the follow-up and the fallout from Manchester United losing at home to Brighton.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.